Hey there, athletes. Coach John Ferry here from Team Wilpers. Excited as always to welcome you to our Week 8 athlete briefing for the Spring Run Challenge. We're going to start with our Week 7 review. So we started with that threshold run. Yet again, we're reaching the peak of this progression, our threshold progression here in Week 7. So we're really stringing together some serious time at zone, kind of getting uncomfortable and bouncing back after those relatively short rests there. So a really solid workout to kind of round this progression out. VO2 max / test pace workout. So the goal, I think pretty simple here, hopefully, is really to practice that pace that you might take into the 20-minute test upcoming here in Week 8. Start to get really comfortable with that, or as comfortable as you can, if you will, but at least know what it is, what your plans are, so that when you jump into the test, there are no questions. We'll finish the week, of course, with our endurance run, taking it nice and easy, as always, to finish out the week. Just a little bit of an announcement here is I know some questions have come out about the Summer Run Challenge as we're coming into our last week here of spring. Summer Run Challenge is going to start on May 27th. So whether or not that's technically summer, TBD, but for us, it finishes in summer. So Summer Run Challenge. Run number 1 here of Week 8 is going to be a VO2 max workout. So people are very familiar with kind of coming into the final week, especially with a test at the end and having kind of a full pull off and a taper. And this is going to be a little bit of that. So we're going to touch on some of these fast paces, but it's going to be at a much kind of smaller level. It ultimately is a much easier workout than the progression that we've been on here. So we've got less time at zone, less training stress. And so although it might not immediately look and feel like it, it absolutely is a back off and step down of training stress here. The reason that we do this, especially coming into a test that has some pretty high intensity and pace, is we don't want you to feel sluggish going into that test by end of the week. We want you to come in feeling pretty connected to that pace that you plan to run and be able to call it up very quickly there. Run number 2, however, our endurance run, is we're absolutely backing off the pace. We're starting to get rested, starting to hopefully give those legs a little chance to bounce back so that you're fresh for the weekend. And our 20-minute test, our key run number 3 here, I'm not going to go too much into it because there's some really good questions. We'll loop back to it, but I think a lot of people have experience with the test now, so we'll keep it quite simple here. The test is a simple test, okay? You want to repeat the process of Week 1, and if everything goes great, you do it just a little bit better than the time before. This isn't necessarily and maybe just remember, the goal isn't necessarily to run the greatest 20-minute test of your life or 20-minute result of your life. That might happen, and that would be great if it does. The objective is just to be a little bit better than last time. So we'll loop back to that in a bit. So I want to jump straight into some questions that came up from the group. Some really great stuff as always, and so we'll take a little bit of extra time there. We're going to start with the Brooklyn Half Marathon. I'll be posting a little bit about this, trying to link people up who are coming into New York City for that race here in a few weeks. I know it's a pretty good group of people. So first question here was, how should Brooklyn runners plan the week after the challenge leading into the half? Should we extend endurance or taper and repeat Week 8, maintain another week of high intensity speed work this week, and delay the taper one more week? So there are a few things that I would do immediately to kind of, if you're running the Brooklyn Half Marathon. And we'll broaden it a little bit here. If you're running a half marathon towards the end of May, I'm pretty sure that one's like May 18th, that weekend. There are a few more kind of around the country at the end of May. So half marathon, end of May. And the first thing I would do is not 20-minute distance tests this upcoming week. You're getting a little bit close to your race. So I don't want you to burn your legs out there. I want you to keep it hard in training during the week. Your speed test, if you will, is going to be that half marathon. So I would do another long run on the weekend, the same way you have been doing now for many, many weeks. Second is I would keep that second workout of the week a higher volume. We've very consistently now been doing kind of 60-minute endurance run plus stride there. So while we're backing off to get those athletes ready for their 20-minute distance test at the end of spring, if you still are training for another race, whether it's half marathon, 10K, etc., but you're still in training this week, there's no real reason to back that off. Go ahead and keep the higher volume there. In terms of repeating week 8, I wouldn't repeat week 8 at all moving forward after the actual week 8. This week is designed to taper those athletes once again, finishing up the spring challenge, going for that 20-minute distance test. But if you're looking to maintain a high level of intensity in training after this challenge concludes here, call it our unofficial week 9, repeating week 7 might not be a bad idea. You're kind of at your peak intensity, both on threshold and the VO2 max workout. You get a little bit of a back off this week with some endurance work and an easier VO2 max workout, which will kind of give you a pop into your final kind of 2 weeks of training there. For a half marathon, I really don't start a taper any more than about 10 days out from that race. Marathon, very different thing, but the half, usually about 10 days. Unless there's a physical issue that we're trying to get over with an athlete, then it might back up as much as 2 weeks. So coming into that week before race week, I keep the training pretty intense on the Monday and Wednesday. We're still doing really good training. The first workout I'd look to really modify as part of my half marathon taper would be the long run the week before the race. So that's really the first thing. And usually when I try to pull it back for athletes, it's somewhere in and around the ballpark of about 60% of the max long run progression. So if you've been running 10 miles, it's backing it to 6, something along those lines. Otherwise here between now and that 10-day mark, I think for athletes running other races towards the end of May, keep your training volume high, your training intensity high. You definitely don't want to pull off the gas quite yet. Our next question here pertains to trail and trail running. So it says, to run on trails, are there different techniques we should develop other than practicing running uphill? Great question. Trail running is super fun. Great thing to get into. A really nice way to kind of change up your everyday routine if you're an all the time road runner. But it also comes with some challenges for sure. And ultimately, the most important thing in trail running is it hugely dependent upon the trail available to you. There are dirt trails, gravel trails, tremendously craggy trails, trails with very single track, high grass, low visibility footing, etc. So in road racing, you kind of know what you're dealing with. Talking about roads, sidewalk, might be hilly, it might be not, but in trail, it's really, really wide variety of things that you can deal with. However, a couple things that I think are kind of good general ideas here. One is that you're most likely going to be slower on trail. Even if it's a nice, kind of soft gravel trail, soft dirt trail, you don't have the energy return that you have on hard surfaces. So you might, it might feel a little bit better on your legs, but you're probably not going to have that same pace. So especially as the trail gets more complicated, you kind of have to, put the watch away and focus on overall time and overall effort of the workout. Because one, you don't want to be staring at your watch. You don't want to be thoughtful about pace. You want to be thoughtful about footing. You want to be thoughtful about your surroundings. The whole reason you went to the trail, hopefully, is to get a little bit of nature time. So make sure you're kind of ignoring that wearable, if you will, and being a bit more present in the moment. And it's okay that it's going to be a little bit slower. That's just how it goes running on softer surfaces. So don't mind the pace. Stabilization is harder on soft surfaces than firm surfaces. So every time your foot hits the ground, it's working a little bit harder to try to stabilize, support you step to step. That can really start to build up over the course of time. So this is a weight room or strength training intervention situation, which is, if you're going to go to start, incorporating trail into your running, you want to really make sure that you're working to strengthen your feet, strengthen your ankles, strengthen your lower legs, hips in general, so that you're really strong and supported when you're out there on softer surfaces. Yeah, you kind of mentioned hills. If there definitely are trails that are also hillies, and if you're running a particular hilly route, you not only need to be good at running hills, but very much baked into the ethos of trail running is power hiking, if you will. So it's knowing when to switch from the run to that hike, being able to not only run proficiently on incline, but hike proficiently at a fast pace so that you're still covering really good distance when you go to that hike, then being able to get right back into the run. So that kind of back and forth between run and hike on the, especially hilly trail work, really important to be a strong hiker in addition to a strong runner. And then the final thing I'm going to kind of mention on kind of trails in particular is anytime you're getting off-road, safety becomes paramount and is much more complicated than before. So you need to make sure that you're bringing your own fluids, bringing your own nutrition, and making sure that you've got enough of it in case something happens that you're going to be okay for a little while. You absolutely need to make sure someone knows where you are, what your route is, and the time you're expected to be back. So you're very much, the more you get off the beaten path, the more important it is to have someone that knows exactly where you are. It's easy to get turned around sometimes. Speaking of which, if you don't have cell service, having some sort of GPS locator or communicator is a great idea. It costs a few $100. Absolutely worth it if that gets you out of a sticky situation that you would have been in otherwise. So just remember, be careful, be smart. You want to always be safe and make sure that you can have a nice, long, healthy relationship with the sport. Next question here, actually about the distance test. So any advice on how to plan my distance test if I want to beat my previous test? I have a hard time figuring out how to pace myself for 20 minutes, but still giving it my all. So first, first things first on here, the giving it your all is a tricky thing to figure out. And really the success in this test and kind of races around this distance comes from a lot of practice and repetition. So I was fairly recently doing a talk with one of our other coaches, Justin Harris, and we were talking about summer racing season and short distance races. And Justin said something I thought was really interesting, where he said to get a feel for 5K racing, he thought it took about 3 races in relatively short proximity. That proximity being probably like 6 weeks or less. And the reason is it's a tough pace. You're really pushing. If you don't have a lot of history in 5K, 1 mile racing, you have to kind of learn those limits. So I know a lot of people would probably like to see this 20-minute distance test spread out much further than 8 weeks apart or put away altogether, but really it's still just not that often. We're talking about with 2-week breaks every 10 weeks, so 4 or 5 times a year you're getting this test in. It's tough to really get that feel for it. What I would say is the more you do it, even with those kind of breaks in between, you're going to get a little bit better and a little bit better. Know what it's supposed to feel like at 5 minutes, at 10 minutes, at 15 minutes. If you don't kind of know that, if you haven't kind of like pushed, succeeded at sometimes, failed at sometimes, you're not really going to know. So you got to keep the practice, keep the consistency of doing the test. However, because week 1 is a baseline test, week 8 is we're looking for an improvement on baseline. This is actually a pretty easy thing to figure out. So the first thing I would absolutely do is just go back to your week 1 test result. Don't worry about the distance achieved. You need to find the pace that you ran for that 20 minutes. Starting the new test here, all you really need to do to get that improvement over week 1, start at that baseline pace and make sure you're holding it up to a certain point and then go a little bit faster. So if it were me coming into this 20-minute test this week, I would look to copy my result of test 1 in the first 5 minutes. I'd be looking to move faster at minute 5 to about minute 15. Then minute 15 to 20, I would be really looking to surge if I had it in me. If not, certainly 17 to 20 would be that time of one final push just to get me a little bit further than the last time around. Well, otherwise, friends, that is all for now. Have an amazing finish to this challenge. Congrats already for getting thus far. Can't wait to see your results and hope to see you back here soon for our summer run challenge. Have a great weekend.